Okay, so that pretty much does it for the service side of this. And again, service is what we're providing to the network. Now, once we determine what the service is going to be, we need to manage all of the components that are going to make up that service. And so this slide here then gives us a listing of what the various elements will be as far as our IT infrastructure is concerned. So we're going to have things like applications. These are going to be the programs that we'll be utilizing. More than likely, you're going to have a database back end. Even if the application itself doesn't require a database, even if the service we're providing doesn't require an application, the fact that we're going to be managing our infrastructure does require a database. Because as you're going to see when we get into this a little bit later on, talking about the various management systems, the management systems, all the data that they collect will want to be stored in a database for retrieval so that we can use them in reports and have flexibility as far as the type of data, the amount of data that we retrieve and then use in some fashion or another. Our desktops, our users, our printers are all parts of the IT infrastructure. Servers, perhaps mainframes or mini-frames. Help desk, consolidated services management. Enterprise network management. You want to think of enterprise network management as the switches, the routers, the basic network infrastructure. And that would also include LAN management. So enterprise management, actually, when you get very specific about it, when you hear that term enterprise, think of wide area networking. So it's going to include local area networks that are all connected by wide area networks. And so at that point, we become an enterprise. Just kind of like the Starship Enterprise, right? And Captain Kirk at the helm. So this is just a graphic then that represents what we just talked about. So here's the enterprise network management. We have routers here that are connecting to a wide area network. So remember, that's if we specifically subscribe to a service that connects us geographically between our local area networks. That would be our WAN connection. Or we might just be using internet services to provide that connectivity between multiple sites. So enterprise management deals with the router interfaces that give us that connection and the speeds, the data transfer speeds and whatnot that give us those outside connections. Then we have overall everything else underneath of that cloud there, and then underneath of these two routers would be our LAN management. So now we're controlling the switches, the hubs. I shouldn't say the hubs because we're not really managing the hubs, but the switches and the routers that are internal to each of the local geographically located networks, the local area networks. Application management, we're going to have servers that are running applications that provide certain services. So if we're running mail services, our application might be Microsoft Exchange. We're doing database services, it might be SQL Server. If you're doing web services, you've got Microsoft IIS. So we would have to deal with the servers as a hardware level, but also the software that's running on those servers. And that would also include the operating systems that those servers are running as well. Upgrades to those operating systems, service packs, things of that nature. We might even have some remote access management if we have users that are working from their house and need to dial in or have some sort of outside access to the corporate network. Perhaps in the server management category, we can also throw in a mainframe or a mini-frame. I don't see too many companies that really run mainframes. Mainframes pretty much fill up like most of this room here. Mini-frames are still out there. I see a few of those from time to time. Usually the large hardware has always been dedicated to what they call data warehousing or the actual database back end. These days that's not always the case. Pretty much you'll see a rack of servers like we have in the back room there. And they're clustered together and connected to a hard drive, and that's the storage area for the database. So database management would be another aspect of that. Server management we talked about. Desktop management, actually again maintaining the operating system, the applications that are running on the desktops. Operating systems need updates. They also need service packs, upgrades from time to time, and the hardware that's associated with those desktops. And then finally, we'll utilize help desk or consolidated service management, which we're going to take a look at in a little bit greater detail further on in this lecture. But those are also components then of the big picture here, which are the elements of our IT infrastructure. So, we need to manage that infrastructure. The achievement of management expectations depends on properly managed components of our IT infrastructure. So we're just not going to throw the equipment out there, throw the software out there and hope it all works. We have to really know what we're doing. We have to set up a plan for how we're going to manage. An IT infrastructure is made up of a combination of separately managed and monitored elements. So what you're going to see is that we have a lot of monitoring going on in this management process. We're going to use what are called agents to send information back to a management console. And that management console then will display the information for us as well as store it into our database. The different management tools often do not interoperate or share data. That's one of the biggest problems in network management right now. Each different organization or company, like an IBM, has been developing management systems for their components without really considering the other companies and their components that are out there. So Digital Equipment Corporation, when they were a big mainframe provider, pretty much was in the same boat. These days you have Microsoft and Novell coming up with their own ways of doing things. And the good news is that we actually have some forums out there that are starting to come together, starting to oversee the process, starting to dictate some open standards that hopefully all these companies will adhere to so we can exchange the data. But right now, they're all in proprietary format. And when I say right now, I say for the most part, because there are some exceptions out there. There are some that are making that headway towards being able to oversee a heterogeneous environment, be able to share with the different management systems the type of data that they are able to retrieve from the systems. And then multiple different categories of management and monitoring tools are required to ensure end-to-end performance of the overall IT infrastructure. So end-to-end performance means the fact that you're sitting there and you're able to cruise the internet while I'm doing this lecture, and you're actually able to do that without any problems. So end-to-end performance is the web server being able to send its page over to the desktop client, and you able to view that page without incurring any issues, any problems while doing so. And so again, when we look at these different categories, we're going to get into like desktop management and server management and the IT networking management, and each one of those has its own management system, has its own way of storing data, own methods or database schemas of what is the important information to be capturing. So it's quite complex, and right now we don't have a lot of interoperability between all those various components.